Or at least biceps, are taking a turn from the last arm day, and that's what I want. I don't want to sit and come in every lift and do the exact same thing. That's just not the nature of lifting. That's not the nature of life, right? If you do the same thing every freaking day, you will get the same result, but nothing new. You know, you go to a vending machine. Every time you hit 1, 4, 7, you can get the same snack. Right? If you want to change it up, you got to, change something up about the setup. But let's start with some, and I say light, it's not, but you're very strong on a bicep biased pull down. I can do way more weight doing this kind of like downward sort of dragging bicep kind of curl than I can a standard curl here. It's just because your lats help a little. And it's just more of you never have so much tension in your biceps. But I do like these at least every so often because they're so different than normal, right? I mean, if hamstrings can be hit pretty hard on a lane curl, they can also be hit pretty hard on the seated curl. Same thing with the RDL. If every time I come in for a curl, or a bicep movement rather, it's always this, even if it's a preacher or a dumbbell or a machine or whatever, it's always here. Shoulders in the same place, arms bending. At least with this, it's kind of a different stretch because it's kind of a multi-angle sort of thing. But if you zoom in, it's still a curl, right? You're not reinventing the wheel of hitting your biceps. I don't think there's a huge benefit to sitting and doing a few sets of supination specifically. Maybe, I've never really done it, so I guess that's not true. I'm not gonna speak so guaranteed like that. But either way, I like these a lot. So let's throw them in for one. Or actually for two, rather. And then for me, today is just gonna be forearms. This would have been a rest day, but come on. Look, as much as I do see the value, good rest day, when was the last time you got a real, genuine forearm pump that made you say, holy crap, I can barely hold on to the steering wheel in my car because there's so much blood and tension in my forearms? Probably not that recently. Forearms are low on the priority list, I feel. I think the hierarchy, arms, chest, and shoulders is up here, S tier, back kind of a little lower. You don't really see it all the time, but still A tier. I think legs get hit in C tier, B tier. It sucks, but I'm just talking about overall percentage of people that are really getting after it. And forearms, shit. The forearms get trained less than calves. Calves are at least kind of a joke because it's always like, oh, you better hit some calves. The idea of not doing it is still, kind of something funny to even say. But forearms don't even have a joke like that to be skipped because it's unironic. They don't get hit. And it's typically backed up by the same arguments. One, you train your forearms during your workouts. When you grab everything, when you grab the bar, when you grab the pull down bar, when you grab all the handles, that trains your forearms. You don't need to work them directly. And to a degree, I think that makes sense. That's why the logic kind of clicks with more people, because it's like, yeah, I kind of feel my forearms a little bit. But if you want bigger forearms, if you want a bigger chest, are you just going to do tricep pushdowns where you feel your chest a little bit? No, you're going to really get after it and smack them around. So I've gone through all sorts of different movements. I could sit in here and do probably, for the back of your forearm, for all these little fingerling looking pieces, there's not a lot. It's really just this kind of action. Whether you load it with a cable or a barbell or a dumbbell, it's going to be the same thing regardless. So that there's not a lot to do there. But in terms of the curling action, is this flexion? This is the flexion aspect of your forearms. You've got a lot at your disposal, right? I'm talking standard dumbbell curls as such, kind of leaning up against a bench, sit here like that. Some guys like doing it where they sit sideways or they lay down in front of the bench with a barbell. Personally, I think that's a little bit funky. This is just a weird angle to do it. Whatever works. Grabbing a cable and just doing straight bar curls like that, kind of like the cat paw sort of meme. Or doing the same thing single arm. Or you get extra crazy and you start setting yourself up a whole arm wrestling rig where you've got you know, like a jiu-jitsu belt wrapped around a thick-ass PVC pipe, and you got these, there's a lot to do. But for me, at least, it's kind of boiled down, I mean, really to 3 movements, but if I had to pick 2, then these would be them. So this, I'm not going to show every set. It's very repetitive. I'm just going to sit here for about 6 or so of each, and then we can cut to the pump that results. So if this is a forearm tutorial, if you're going to tell somebody, how am I going to pump my forearms up? I don't think this is a bad method. For me, at least, right? And of course, that's kind of a preferential thing. You can decide on your own, you know? But it's going to start with a bench as such, and I'm putting my feet up on the wheels of the bench so they can be a little higher. If your leg is slanted down like this, it's just, I don't feel it as much. I want my leg actually a little bit upwardly angled so I have a good resting position to sit on. And grab a dumbbell of your choosing, not too heavy, not too light. If you go too heavy, you're just going to hurt your wrist, and then you're not even going to feel it. So for me, that sweet spot ends up being 20 pounds. Single arm, as you'll see in a moment, but just here and really kind of squeeze. These reps are not going to be so damaging on a rep by rep basis, right? If I'm doing a crazy ass squat, I'm going to do 1 rep, and my first reaction is holy shit, and then do another one, and I'm like, this is crazy. But with things like this, it's just a little more gradual of a burn, you know? So I'm talking, get to the point where really even finishing a rep is just getting kind of tricky. There's not much more motion left. That's your cue. Put it down, wait a minute, honestly, even 30 seconds. This isn't really, it's kind of a quick recovery just because you're not hitting it that hard. 5 or 6 of these, and the back of your forearm should be pumped up enough that you should start to see some kind of fancy stuff going on. And when you're lean, this will pay off. If you're kind of off season, 20% body fat, 18% body fat, not as noticeable, especially if you might have more fat deposits in your arms, just because it's kind of going to get covered up like any sort of cut or striation. But if you're really kind of peeled, then every time you pick any kind of dumbbell up, you'll see all these kind of fancy things go on to the back. And that's what I'm working for, right? It's not something I'm really going to get revealed now, but it's for me in the future, for once I lean down and actually see what's been built underneath. You know, it's like those America's Got Talent videos where the guy paints a whole painting in water upside down. You don't know what the hell's going on. But then once he splashes it with flour, flips it over, that would be the dieting phase. Then you really see what's it got built. And you're like, holy crap. How the hell did he do that? Even though he just showed you the whole time, you know? But just one of these, you know, to be shown, repeat 5-6 times or so until you're really burning. And then we'll move on to kind of movement number 2. Out of all options available, really just dumbbell, barbell, or Smith machine, Smith RDLs are my favorite. Just something about the fact you don't really have to balance. I can just totally feel like it's kind of a funky feeling to really contract your hamstrings in this sort of movement, because that's all I want to do. I want my lower back to be just tense enough to keep me braced. I don't want my glutes coming into play at all. All I want to feel is my hamstrings kind of get tight, and then once I start pulling up, feel them kind of pull in. So it's kind of just a trial and error thing. And I think lighter the better, frankly, because this is more of a squeezing stretch kind of movement anyway. You know, so that's like, I know it's a weird comparison, but sometimes I would compare this to like an overhead tricep movement, because all I'm trying to do is really ride the stretch. It's not so crazy to squeeze up top. Like I can squeeze, but it's not the same as like a hamstring curl, you know? So it's just a little different, right? But if you can't actually feel your hamstrings activating, for me at least, I like a pretty narrow foot stance. And honestly, sometimes even a little kind of, what would it be, like sort of reverse duck footed with my toes pointed in, because that kind of helps me get this feeling of like pulling my ankles together. And that just lets me kind of feel my hamstrings tighten up. But that's kind of a person by person sort of thing. I never like watched an RDL tutorial. I just kind of tried them until I could feel them. So that's all I gotta say there. But this will be good. 2 plates is heavy enough. I forgot my straps though, which kind of sucks. Repeat a movement, but not entirely, because it's really just a repeated movement in a combination. So as a finisher for buys, and honestly, if I was done with that set of 60s, I'm cool with that. I feel like I've kind of done enough, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure I'm good. And that's my cue to usually add 1 more. So same thing as before, squeezing, burning, kind of, bicep bias pull downs, drop the weight in half, smack the cable down to the floor, and then just finish with some curls. And I don't need these curls to be complete failure. What I really want out of this set is just to really feel a good kind of burn. And honestly, by the end of the set, I want to feel substantially more pumped than the beginning. Sometimes arms is a little tricky. You don't have a good gauge apart from just subjective feeling. Hamstrings is cool because as my hamstrings get more and more pumped, especially when I'm doing a seated curl over there, it gets to the point where my hamstrings won't even fit and I have to put the leg notch one bump higher because my hamstrings are getting so pumped up on the bottom, it's thickening up my leg enough that I have to accommodate it with the machine. But I think this as a finisher will be good. And we can start tries, which honestly, I want triceps to be the star of the show because biceps, if they stayed totally the same, but my triceps got a few extra inches of mass, game changing. Guys who have, too big of biceps, which is that's never the case. It's more so that their triceps don't match. Sometimes you can just get a little bit of a look, it's very rock climber, wrestler, that's not what I'm aiming for. All right, I'm aiming for kind of the brolic, shit, if I could pick anybody's arms to look like. Kevin Levroni's are up there. Who else? Arms like freaking basketballs. And it's not because their triceps are huge. Like it is, but it's also because their tries on the backside actually really represent, it's like if somebody has a huge chest, but no back. You got a cool chest, but things are just not in proportion, So do I think I'll ever get Rolly Winkler arms? Let a lifter dream, right? Let a lifter dream. Let's hit this shit. I think coming back to finish right here will be it. So if this is a good one, that will add up to 7 lat focused sets. That's about right. But I'm obviously not judging it just on the number. I'm judging it on sort of the overall amount of fatigue, damage / kind of pumpness that I feel. And this is kind of like a very current thought process. I'm getting a lot of comments. Well, how pumped you are does not matter. The pump is inconsequential. It's all about muscular, mechanical tension and stretch and fiber activation and motor unit recruitment. And to that I say, well, when you flip a light switch and the lights come on, did the lights come on because you flipped a switch? Or did the lights come on because flipping that switch caused, electricity to flow through all this stuff? And then that's what happened, So I think you're not wrong. I would never say that you're not wrong that the working out is all about, tension and workload and overall just like progressive, making sure that you really push yourself hard. And you can explain it however, scientifically you want to. You can say, well, actually, you didn't just flip the switch. You sent an electric signal through your nervous system and your brain computed that you wanted to put your hand onto the switch. And then, you can explain it down to minute details. Somebody could write an entire encyclopedia-long book about exactly everything that goes into a dumbbell curl if they wanted to meander their way around and, write the whole and explain the whole thing like a high school essay where you're trying to reach an extra word limit. Saying something in the most complicated way doesn't mean it's more right. If I have a good lift, motor unit recruitment probably there from all these squeezing, nasty sets, burning, everything else, plus some heavy ones, plus some lighter ones, whatever. And if I'm well hydrated and well rested, that's going to result in me being very pumped. So it's not like physically being pumped means I'm growing. But if everything I need to do in the pursuit of growth is correct, then I'm going to be pumped, and that's kind of an indicator I'm doing something right. Grab the 60s and go wild. And by wild, I kind of do mean wild, So I'm not saying that I just want to smack the curls around for no reason. And if every set I did looked like this, I'd probably come to the same conclusion, right? If the only training I ever saw someone do was really erratic there might be room for criticism. But, and I'm not saying there's no room for criticism for me, but what I'm saying is after having done now 4 squeezing, kind of more burning, slow, very controlled sets, the feeling that I get from heavier weight and slightly faster reps, so faster transitions from flexed to stretched, it just kind of does something, right? And it could be like a sarcoplasmic swelling effect or a pump or a burning or lactic acid, whatever. I'm concerned with putting the weight down and being able to say, okay, that felt like a good set, or that didn't really feel that good at all. I want to move on and do something else, so that's my gauge. Now, of course, you kind of have to develop a sense for that. And I think I've got a decent sense, at least for me. But all that's to say is this is going to feel good. All right. Taking a couple of minutes to amp myself up for this one. 10 plates on this hip press is pretty hefty. Even just doing the first feeler, like just as a 1 rep, was a little tricky. But mind you, that wasn't a real set. There is a certain just bring itness that happens when you're actually about to throw some shit around instead of just warming up and getting exposed to it. But those were 2 awesome openers of leg extensions, because even just squatting down and bending my legs and stretching out my quads to get just right there to sit down, I can feel that they're tense because they've got so much blood in them already that it's kind of adding a little bit of like this elastic effect, which is part of why I like pressing with a quad pump already, at least for most regular working sets, because it just feels better, right? You're not getting a crazy squeeze anyway, so if they're pre-exhausted and already kind of got some damage to them, it just kind of adds an extra level to these, I feel, beyond just the fact that they're hard. All right, so I was planning something a little more along the lines of all biceps, all triceps, but actually getting started, I think I want to do a little bit more of a kind of combination approach. So let's grab the 80s first. Of course, I've warmed up both with push downs and curls, gradually heavier, heavier. This is just about right for 10 or so. Obviously, I'm aiming for 30, but sometimes you gotta have at least a minor amount of reason with your weight decisions. But I'm gonna go bis first, and then immediately jump onto a set of push downs. So no rest, no nothing, just the time it takes to go from here to there. And with arms, it's not such an oxygen demanding set that I think doing a set of curls first is going to completely wreck me and inhibit my ability to do failure on those push downs. But afterward, I will take a second and kind of have a combined rest period for both sets before jumping back up and doing it again. So this combo will be good. And instead of rope push downs, I'm doing 2 extra long D handles, which may as well be a rope. It's the same logic of like having the weight be able to spread side to side. But the rope is, the rope's very singular in the way that you do it, because you have to have your hands in this kind of, like you can't really turn them in or out or just anything. Like you're holding onto the rope. But with 2 D handles, you can kind of twist your hands in and out a little bit. So whenever I do those push downs, I feel like instead of the rope just trying to pull my hands apart, I'm almost pushing them apart, because I'll kind of turn my hands inward, if you follow. And it just kind of feels a little better. It gets me a little more long head, I feel, because then it's just, instead of the sideways action, it's almost an in and back kind of sensation. And for me, that gets my long heads going. But let's get started. Start with this pull down. And this is a little extra fancy. Could not tell you exactly why. Yeah, I don't know. Because I may as well be doing a regular ass pull down. There's nothing. Does it even converge? Yeah, there's no converging, no nothing. It's my hands are the same distance apart the whole way around. So it's not like so much different than a regular pull down. But something about the fact that it's like, let's just kind of look. The fact that it's at this angle means at the top, it's not only pulling my arms up, but also backward, kind of like pullover-ish. And as I pull down, I'm not just pulling straight down, I'm kind of doing this arcing action, which is very, well, I mean, just feels lattish. You know, it's like you're a freaking swimmer. That's the reason why they're like smacking their lats around. It's because they're always doing like this kind of, you know, sort of pulling motion. But either way, I feel this a lot in my outer lats. Like I'm talking right under here in my armpit where it's like spreads out. And that's what I want. Honestly, for me, back-wise, I don't think I'm too lacking in the thickness game. At least, you know, for my size. What I really want is more width. You know, I want my lats to freaking spread out. When, you know, I do a front double bi, they're creeping out to like the middle of my tricep. You know, obviously not that far, but that's what I'm aiming for. So let's get this set started. So it's still heavy. I mean, this is the stack. So, I need a freaking force measuring scale. I'm talking like something I can cook the carabiner to, so I can really feel just how much force this is. But either way, I really like this setup. Seat, cable at, well, actually, ooh. Okay, yeah. It's cable at the lowest setting, wide-ish grip. I'm not talking grabbing the rubber balls, but just where the handle kind of starts to bend. So what is that? Maybe 1.5, 1 5/8 shoulder width. But sitting here and really getting the squeeze. I'm talking I want my elbows to come all the way around my back, bump each other, hold it, and then let my shoulders roll forward and totally stretch out my traps, right? It's, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing to imagine because when you're doing your lats, like here they're in their, I guess, kind of contracted position. This would be like totally contracted. And then the more you get up here, the more they're stretched. Traps, similar, but you know, there's no arm motion as much. It's more where your shoulders are positioned. So this would be traps fully contracted, and then this is them like fully opened up, you know. So I'm trying not to move my spine back and forth, you know, and lean, but I do want my shoulders to feel like they're really stretching out my traps. Just going back and forth between as deep of a stretch as I can and a crazy squeeze. Because for a lighter set like this, I think that's a little more important. You know, if I just had like double this amount of weight and I'm just kind of pumping them out, the tension of my lats is way more intense. Then, you know, making sure I get a perfect stretch and contraction, not so important, I feel. Obviously it's important, but it's, you know, I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. But let's get this started. And these bicep bias pull downs, these are sneaky, right? You might not, I mean, you don't feel a crazy amount of fatigue in your biceps on rep 1. Because, I mean, the leverage of it, you're pretty strong, you know. With the push down, this is heaviest at the top because my hands, where the rope is loaded, is furthest away, you know, sideways from where my tendons and my triceps are actually acting. But for the bicep curl, it's lightest at the top, right? Because you're very strong here, just this minute little motion. But the fatigue adds up. But either way, one more, same style. So for this set, I am gonna change it up. Same 3 movements. I like the combo of push downs, standing curls, and overhead extensions. But I'm gonna change up their order. So this time, I'm gonna go overhead extension, drop the cable, cable curls, and then throw the cable back up and just burn out with regular push downs. So a little bit of a roundabout approach, but I can kind of explain some of the portions. Like, it's almost, you know, for triceps at least, like a rest pause set, because I'm doing a full set to failure of overhead, give my triceps a second while I do the curl, and then coming back to finish the job with the push downs, right? It's like a John Wick scenario, you know, run up a staircase, triple kill with a backflip. You come back down the staircase, realize you had a straggler, put them down. You know, that's, yeah. This is a good setup. I've seen machines that are just like this, you know, seat cables as such. And if you have a gym that has that as a dedicated machine, I'm jealous. That's kind of cool. But at the cost of using a bench and 2 cables at once, odds are you can pretty much do this anywhere. So not too heavy, only 100 pounds on either side, which is very reasonable. But what I'm really aiming for with these, much more of a squeeze than the sets of incline. I'm talking like I want a full second down the stretch, repeat, right? I want the squeeze to be a bit extra emphasized. I'm talking like a skull crusher would be those heavy dumbbell bench, whereas this is a little more like a tricep extension with a rope. And I'm using lighter weight, really trying to squeeze and feel like I'm trying to bend my arms backwards. I'm trying to morph my hands through themselves at the top to the point where my elbows touch, like this, if you get what I'm saying. Like that's, I want to squeeze as though the rep can continue on, even though it's already reached its sort of like, you know, maxed range of motion. But let's get a good song going and go nuts here. Because as cool as it looks to, you know, be kind of grainy, kind of whatever, whilst, you know, fucking lean, look, or no. Yeah, I guess I'm saying it is crazy when you're diced and lean. So it's something to look forward to, and kind of, I feel, something that motivates me, knowing that I'm not going to be like crazy diced, peeled, veiny, grainy, vascular, and, you know, every other cool pump describing term. The whole point of the off season is to make that look even freakier, right? I mean, you can be diced whenever the hell you want, you know? Not to say it's easy, but there's no limit to how big you have to be before you can be lean, right? So how I look at that is like, all right, you know, I certainly like being lean, but every time I peel down, I want it to be on the backswing of a good off season so I can see differences, you know, because I'm not totally done. I don't think you're ever totally done, you know. It's kind of like, as long as you're alive, you're kind of going to want to be in better shape than you are. It's like a never satiating sort of thing, like Sisyphus style. But, you know, I think we can agree there's like at least semi-short term, like year-to-year goals that we want to work on, regardless of what our end total goal might be. And for me, at least, let's keep putting some freaking beef on, right? More, maybe, actually, I don't know how many pounds. Like, I don't have a to-do list of 3 extra pounds on my hamstrings, 1 extra pound, like it's not like that specific. To put it a little more bluntly, it's just exercise everywhere, right? As long as it's in well, you know, distributed distribution. But I think nothing else to talk about. I get to go home feeling like a freaking G. Let's roll. So, plan for combo number 1. And if you're ever going to do a supersetting kind of lift like this, where you're doing a tricep movement and then immediately a bicep movement, it, well, let's just say it helps to simplify your setup, you know, because it depends on how busy your gym is, but you don't want to be the guy who runs 4 machines down and says, bro, I'm on this for another 6 sets. You know, you kind of hog and shit at that point. So the cable is perfect, because switching from try to buy is like nothing. It's just one swap. So rope first, very squeezing, emphasized. I'm talking like a full second, maybe 1.5 seconds. Hold, trying to bend my arms backward, like they're gonna snap in half, exorcist style. And then just, you know, take it to failure. The rope kind of humbles you in the sense that as long as you keep a good upright posture, there's not a lot of cheating, because the whole point of it is the fact that you're pulling it apart as well. So with a straight bar, you can kind of get your chest involved and turn it into this downward press. But with the ropes, you know, you'd have, if you're doing the rope wrong, it would look pretty freaking silly. But rope extensions first, and then bicep bias pull downs afterward, which totally same style, squeeze, hold, slow release, as many as possible. All right, I'm decided. All of hamstrings, followed by all of quads. So one thing I really like about this stack is it's freaking heavy. Right? I'm talking, like, for me to do 80 here, which is light enough that I can squeeze it, control it, really kind of burn. But I mean, shit, I am certainly not a, like, there's some stacks I've seen, some equipment I mean, I forget the exact brand, and I wouldn't like name drop them just to dog on them, but I mean, I've seen leg curls, like a seated leg curl, where something about the leverage, like doing the stacked single leg, totally feasible. Like it's honestly just kind of stupid. So I'm definitely a little bit more preferential towards machines that use their, weight stacks very effectively. Because honestly, 80 pounds on anything else will not feel like this. But these first few are just going to be, I guess kind of really giving effort to every phase of the rep. Quick contraction, like I think slow reps beyond a certain point, I don't know if I really see the benefit. But for the hold, I really want to hold and squeeze, and just like, even though I can't move my leg any further up in the rep, I still want to feel like I'm trying to pull extra for like that full second, and then a slow eccentric down to completely straight legs, which sometimes might feel like a lot depending on how heavy you're going. Like if I'm doing a heavy set, I might not go completely straight legged just because it'd be a little bit too much pressure on my hamstrings, so I guess too much tension. But with lighter weight, I want to go all the way down, sit in the stretch for a second, really kind of feel it, and then come back up and just repeat for as many as possible. My version of looking at the way I've been doing shit and just tweaking it a little. Usually I think of this as a finisher movement. So, this is kind of similar to if you do it single arm with a D handle, kind of just, the point of the bench being inclined isn't even as much that it's like a specific angle, it just kind of keeps your legs from sliding forward. So I can lean in for like a good lat stretching, like pull down kind of action, and then also lean back into more of like, kind of a row-ish squeeze, but not like an upward squeezing row that's more trap, more kind of lower lat, if you will, right? But usually I save this for the end, because in my mind I'm like, okay, awesome lat stretch and squeeze into a little bit of mid-back row, which I know I was just saying, I want to do a little bit more lat today. But I think the fact that I always finish with this, I'm closing myself off to new ideas if I don't try starting with it, And if I think it sucks, I'll just move on to a pull down, right? But let's get started. I'm set up, but inverted. So I really like this combo. Depending on the busyness of your gym, you might not be able to throw this in. Usually, if I ever, this is kind of a tough one. It depends on how busy your gym is, because you're taking a bench and 2 cables, and you can't really work in because then somebody's gonna have to move it up. This is where I'm spoiled in here. But yeah, same logic as before, but there's not gonna be any cross action. This will just be squeezing, holding, and with anything cable press related, I'm kind of a little bit of an exception to the rule with those crossbody ones I was doing, because it's just kind of a different feel because I'm almost pushing downward. But anything like really pushing upward, cable, if I have my hands turned in, like, more like a regular barbell grip, it kind of just cues me to get some front delt and kind of hunch action. So for me, and I'm not saying that's like you can't isolate your chest, but it's much easier for me to really focus on pulling my shoulders back and keeping my palms turned up. So instead of like pressing with my my index finger, my thumb inward, I'm almost putting all the force through the bottom of my hand like this. And it just lets me get more chest than shoulder. And that's what I want. I don't need any more shoulder activation. All right. Not exactly a light set, but relatively lighter than those dumbbell curls were. So seated curls, and it's not that different from sitting here and doing like just a standing easy bar cable curl, but I'm definitely going to prefer to sit, mainly just because now I'm using less of my body to do the set, right? Standing, I'm kind of using more traps and lower back just to keep myself kind of upright. It's a little trickier to catch your breath, whereas if I could pop a squat, I'm stable right here. I barely have to even like keep the rest of my body tense just so I can do the act of a curl, and it kind of lets me be a little more, maybe efficient isn't the right word, but kind of direct with my focus, right? I'm not gonna be able to do a good set if I'm trying to, juggle a hacky sack at the same time. And obviously that's a total exaggeration, but I think the spirit of it kind of, plays around. If I was somebody who really needed to work my front delts, I'd probably do more seated pressing than I would standing overhead. Not to say it wouldn't work, but the amount of effort compared to, results of stimulation of the intended muscle group, I want that to be like 1-to-1. I don't want that to be an inefficient ratio. But let me get another song playing and get a good set here. And these two will be heavier, or this set will be a little heavier. I might end up, doing 2 heavy ones and then dropping it even by half, and then doing light squeezing, burning ones. Or it's the same movement, but I would consider it a different set just because of the drastic difference of weight and kind of execution, if you catch me there. Seated curls, hard to beat this one. And I forget the exact brand name, but if you're, so my old school, they totally replaced all the gym equipment in the rec center. Not the best stuff. I'm talking plastic. And then also the stack was not heavy at all. Like, I'm talking guys were doing single leg curls with it, like, on the regular. I'm not even talking like the stronger. So all that's to say is I want to start with a heavy, semi-squeezing, holding, seated curl. Do a couple and then go from there. And when I say semi-squeezing, I'm talking I am going to hold and squeeze at the bottom of every rep while I'm strong. And as I get weaker, the reps will kind of begin to get quicker until I really can't do anything of a meaningful range of motion. Heavy enough, or I guess that kind of like seated pull down row combo. And I don't really want to do heavy pull downs right now. I like nasty heavy pull downs as like a starter when I'm fresh and really kind of like set the tone for the lift. But I've already done 4 good working lat focused sets. I don't think I'm going to get so much out of just moving a shit ton of weight around instead of really working with a manageable amount. So with 200, I can get a really good squeeze, hold, slow release, 12, 15 reps or so, solid. But I want to change it up a touch and add a little bit to it instead. And I'm trying to think of what kind of superset I wanted to add, like a pullover, like a something or other. But I think this row will be perfect. So not failure here, like 10-ish reps, like as a good pre-exhaust, a little bit of upper back, but still kind of lat focused, because there's no row that involves no lats, because what's a pull down, right? Here, and what's a row? It's very similar. You're always getting this sort of rotating lat action. But 4 plates here as a pre-exhaust, then moving on to a finisher squeezing set of pull downs, that'll be a good combo. And do as many as I feel will be good. More. And then I think pull downs are calling my name, but I'll decide that after this set. I think there's a pretty serious value in having a good workout planned, right? The movements you like, maybe you love doing rows immediately after pull downs. That's your shit. That's your version of a formula, right? And you like it. But I've been putting a lot more emphasis, and I'm saying like over the course of time, onto more so like kind of judging on a set-by-set basis how the lift should go. If this felt, well, it does feel pretty good, but I only want to do the 4. But if I wanted to just sit here and do an 8-setter of just these rows, I could leave totally happy about it. I hit my lats in a way that I really liked, totally fine. I wouldn't only do this movement forever, but for a lift, shit man, sometimes simpler the better. But yeah, one more, and then I think we'll move on to something else I think will be even better. Flies after presses. A classic move, may as well be the freaking pecs gambit. But it's not for no reason, man. Heavy tension, not so much of a crazy squeeze on top, because the weight is only pushing down, not pulling out, if you follow me. So with chest, you got presses and you got flies. And then you got movements that are kind of a combo where it's like a press that presses in, and it's like a middle ground. So that's one thing where I would say, I had that whole talk of like, sometimes you only need to do one thing in a lift and it's fine. I think presses and flies, steak and potatoes. They kind of are meant to be together. But after this, I'm gonna move on to, I think, a converging cable press. And shit, man, if these sets are good, that'll be it. A little trifecta movement-wise for today. Be the pullover, you're freaking correct. So, plan to make it a little bit more, well, tricep-y, is essentially just climb inside, and instead of going for this overhand flying motion, stand up, don't use the seat, and kind of just bend over for more of a press. I saw a clip of somebody doing these with like a dedicated tricep machine, and this is very similar. I mean, it's different, but because it loads at a different angle, but once you actually get it loaded, I mean, shit, if your gym has the Arsenal pullover, you also have an Arsenal pushdown. In a way, you know, it's kind of, might be an acquired taste for some, but I did a feeler rep of this yesterday during back, and I was like, yeah, this will be good. So that's the plan for right now. Heavier, not the whole stack. I think that might be a little much. This is a sense, or a little bit of a compulsion that you'll get, and that I'm sure a lot of you already have, where it's like, all right, you know, I'm already doing pull downs with 230. The stack only goes up to 260. What's 30 pounds? Going a little extra heavy. Whereas that 230 number was what you would have been comfortable with in the first place and would have been a good set. But it's like, you're just so close to the stack, you may as well bump it a little more, you know. And I think to a degree, that's not a bad thought, because it's like, okay, you're gonna get a heavier set in, you're probably gonna bring it a little harder, you're a little more amped. So I'm not saying it's like all bad, but you know, don't get caught doing that every time. If you know a certain number is like about right for how you're feeling in the workout, you know, if you're doing 275 and you're like, well, what's another 20 pounds on either side to make it 315? That could be asking for trouble. That's all I'm saying. So this is my bread and butter of the bottom side. And one nag that I see on forearm training is I'll hear guys, and this is mainly like strength guys, like wrestling or like just straight arm wrestling. They're going to say that a bodybuilder's approach to forearm training doesn't build strength, it just builds size. And to that I would say, yeah, that's kind of the point. You know, getting bigger forearms will make you stronger. I've got a dynamometer, so that's like the measure of just your grip force. My heaviest, or my strongest grip on my left hand was 212 on a strong day. That was a while ago, but I can't really, because it's like basically two knurled handles just like this, maybe an inch apart so you can kind of squish them together. But my right hand's grip strength is always fucking lagging now. I don't know if it's because of just the way my hand is, or because I sliced this part open on my thumb, but I can't really like get into it as much. Like I feel strong, like I mean I can swing around this thing one-handed, but yeah, this one's just got a little more beef. But I'm not, the strength is whatever, right? I mean, half the point of having big forearms is just those things are big. That's cool. It's not exactly like, you know, I'm not gonna look at somebody and say, okay, man, what's your grip strength to forearm circumference ratio? That's not what we're here for, you know. But I've already done a couple of these. If this is I mean, I'm like close to fully pumped, so if this is good, then this will be the end of it. But I'm talking similar style as the last one. A little quicker, but just, I mean, this is the motion right here. That's it. It's not a lot, right? But it's enough to really squeeze. And I do like looking at my forearm in the mirror when I do these, because I can actually kind of like visualize pulling all the way down here. Because all this is fingers and hand, right? This whole portion of meat is all doing this action. And it ties in all the way down, really to almost even further, like up my elbow, like right up here. So when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, you know, this way or the other, I want to be able to kind of imagine pulling all the way from down here. Like I'm not putting my mind into my hand, I'm trying to pull my hand down with these tendons, if you can kind of imagine. You know, it's like you got a, it's like at your grandma's house, how she's got, you know, all over the place, you're gonna have those little like grip assistants where it's the two prongs, you got the handle, right? You're not exerting force at the tip of it, you're pulling it from the base. See? So that's kind of what I'm trying to imagine here. And that helps me get a little more into my forearm. At least enough that I notice. Definitely leaning into the theme of some nasty sets here. And by nasty, I mean, look, I'm not saying bad, I'm saying heavy, done at, you know, a bit more of a faster kind of pace, But in no way do I feel like this is throwing weight around, you know, to an extreme degree, right? Definitely more so than a light squeezing set. So it's certainly a style of its own. I'm not going to say that like everybody should do sets like this all the time, but in the mix, I mean, shit, when I move on to the leg curls in a minute for the last like probably 3 or 4 finishers, they're going to be very different, you know? And then for me, how I see that is just getting a hamstring pump in 2 very different yet kind of synergistic ways. Plus, the pump at the end of it kind of speaks for itself. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can dog on somebody's javelin throwing skills, but if they still get that thing flying, looks like it's working, right? So, one more. A lot lighter than the previous sets, I guess, except for those last 2. And it's kind of exactly what I said. You know, from hitting some hard, heavy ones first, it's kind of making the lighter, squeezing ones that much more impactful, you know? Because if I were to grab the 20s fresh, I don't think I could get an awesome set out of it. It'd be too light. It would take too many reps to even like get that amount of fatigue out of it. But at the end of the whole workout, after you do some crazy heavy curls, dumbbell, cable, whatever, then I'm already kind of pre-exhausted and fatigued. You know, I'm sitting in a kind of a situation where I'm just not as physically able to exert that much force. Then the 20s are looking a little better, you know? So just a thought, right? But you can make the same argument backwards, where if you start with lighter squeezing movements, you get a better kind of like easing into the weights and the intensities of the sets, and then it makes you go harder on the heavier ones later because you're already kind of in the groove. You know, a lot of ways to swing it. As long as you're pumped at the end, I think you're doing something right. But let's get a good one here. And even though it's lighter, this is a little heavier for a light one. So the next one might be even lighter than this. I may have overdone it with those squats. Not to the point of like, you know, tweaking myself, but I mean, shit. You know, it's been like, it's been four full days, plus a rest day too, and I'm still feeling them quads and hams. But I'm okay with that. There's a difference between, you know, like, oh shit, I tweaked myself, you know, hit my rotator, hit my whatever, but like just kind of overall fatigue from knowing you brought it like a nutcase, I'm cool with that. And not only like in my regular training am I cool with that, but I just like that in general. Like for me to be able to say, oh, I went too hard, I've got to take an extra day to really recuperate and like not be lying about it. You know, I think there's a lot of rest days that are taken unnecessarily, just, you know, they're kind of pretending like, oh yeah, I need to, no, to have to take like a legit kind of portion off from going that nuts, that makes me feel cool, right? That makes me feel kind of good about the working out, and it just gets me going to, you know, go extra hard, you know, on a continual kind of basis, right? With the working out, I mean, as much as it's, you know, we're all talking, it's like, okay, make sure you're doing the best routine and the best movements and the best this and everything totally perfect. You gotta like it, right? So if you've got a certain itch that you need to scratch with your training, or maybe you love supersets, you love nasty sets of easy bar curls or pull downs or whatever, you know, you love doing, you bent over rows and you're really just, if you like it, you get pumped and you're not hurting yourself, anybody telling you off is kind of just being a hater at that point. But I'm going to camp out here on this donkey calf raise. Just the stack will be good, but this machine can like have plates added. I think this will be just about enough. And then I'll probably just splice between these since I'm just going to do calves today. Not a ton to see, but at the end they should be pretty swollen. So honestly, we'll probably just do like a quick couple second montage of each set, then we just cut straight to the pump. You know, this is one tip, and sometimes I just like starting a workout off a little lighter. But if you're ever in a crunch, like if you don't have a full comfortable hour and a half to have a lift where it's like, I can do whatever I want, no need to rush, whatever, then you're good. But if you ever have to like, okay, shit, I only got 40 minutes for arms, I'm probably not gonna wanna, it's not wasting, but I wouldn't wanna spend 20 minutes warming up for a crazy heavy set of dumbbell curls when I could just jump right into a light squeezing set of cable curls first, you know? So it's almost like kind of the classic logic of pyramiding up sets. Because then you're doing working sets, you're getting yourself warmed up and pumped and fatigued and everything, but you're also doing working sets in the process, you know? So just a little more efficient. Not to say I don't like starting heavy, but sometimes starting light works out too. This Smith is a little extra fancy because, as you'll notice, there is no fucking pulley system. So this actually is 3 plates. There's no kind of magic about it. The only thing that's different is it's not moving back and forth. I think most Smith machines should be like this. There we go. Not to loom over you, but yeah, this stack goes up to 150. And I don't think, even when I'm fresh, I've never done like a full stack set of these leg curls just because it's so hefty. And even just doing a feeler just now with 80, a little too heavy. So 60, and these will be very controlled. Not that those weren't. So actually, I think the word controlled is kind of wrong. I'm just thinking slower with more emphasized portions of the rep. The actual like squeezing portion of doing the rep, that I'm not sure I always see the appeal of going like crazy slow. I do see the appeal of a slower, you know, eccentric, kind of releasing it, because it's just like this, I don't know, it's hard to describe. I really feel it with leg curls and tricep extensions, where if I'm going really slow, kind of letting the rope kind of relax, it's not like a gradual just release of tension. It's like I'm just feeling these little micro, just whatever, all the way up. And it just feels a little different, you know. So that's the plan here. And then with 60 pounds, even though my hamstrings are now tired out from those 5 heavy sets, I'll still be able to get all the way to the top and get a little extra squeeze, because I want the rep to look like it has 4 phases. So I think one more than normal. Regular, you know, concentric squeeze. And then there's usually, you know, we'll say just holding it at the top, but I want to take it a step further where I feel like I'm still trying to move the weight beyond as far as I can even bend my legs, and then relax all the way, full stretch, and repeat. And I'm much more concerned with getting my legs all the way straight and stretched out now with this, because usually towards the end of a lift, or an end of a muscle group at least, I'm a little more concerned with less tension and more just a good gradient of contraction to stretch. You know, when I'm doing incline Smith or whatever, I'm not going, like, I'm not grabbing a 𝒮𝓊𝓁 bar or whatever it's called and like going, like, I'm more concerned with the tension, you know. So the rep range ends up being slightly less stretch focused than like a really big cable fly, you know. But it's kind of a give and take. But I can tell I'm talking too much. Yeah, maybe 2. There's potential for 1, but no, there's potential for 2. 1 guaranteed. And this is kind of my starter. For triceps, I've been starting with a lot of light, you know, still heavy, but controllable weight for rope extensions, or sometimes kind of underhand sort of stuff, but something that I can really get a good squeeze on and kind of start getting things moving, you know. And part of the reason why I like the leg extension, it's the most, honestly, out of everything, the leg extension is the most squeeze focused movement for quads that I think you can get your hands on. Everything else is stretch focused. I'm looking at 4 badass pieces of leg equipment in front of me, but none of them have a wild squeeze, because the resting position of a press is at the top and all the weight is just going straight through your freaking bones. You know, you're just standing. Somebody could hold 4 plates on their back and just stand there for way longer than they could when they're kind of down in the stretch position of, you know, the whole. And of course, that's the point. But if I want to get that squeeze side of things too, like, you know, maybe not as much squeeze, but, you know, heft of like a seated curl versus more stretch of a laying curl, I don't think there's a place for, you know, quads without leg extensions. Now, I don't think they need to be the star of the show, but let's just say I'd be surprised if I showed up to a gym and they said no leg extensions. But gonna do alternating 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 until just about, you know, as much as I can do. and either repeat or move on to a press. So let me just get a good song playing. All right, next up, some light squeezing, and not only squeezing, but holding pull downs will be good. So only 170, which is very manageable. And what I want to feel is like this little extra oomph at the bottom, right? You know, everybody can do a pull down and just kind of pump it around. Or when I do a heavy set, that's kind of all I'm doing, just pumping the weight around. But when I go a little lighter, there's this extra portion of the set, or the rep, where it's okay, pull down, pull down, pull down. I'm basically at the bottom of my range of motion. Ugh. And it's just this little extra flex. And at the cost of using lighter weight, the additional just like burn and activation I get from that little extra oomph, well worth it. To do anything else crazy hefty and feel like I'm getting anything out of it. So as a finisher, what I like doing, and this isn't the most intense thing in the world, the whole point is really just, I should probably come up with a name for it. I feel like I say this for all body parts, because for like 80% of the lift, I want heavy, legit working sets. But towards the end, for a few, just to really get as pumped up as I can get, I like lighter ones that aren't necessarily to failure, but are just kind of quick stretch, contraction, like doing a set of leg extensions and really just pumping them out to get a ton of blood into my quads. So that's the plan here. Alternating 5 reps of just kind of a cross cable press. And I'm feeling my whole chest, you know, bottom to top. But just from doing them so quickly, I feel like it's just like I'm holding a sponge underwater and just really getting all the air out and siphoning as much blood into it as possible. And then we can go down to the dungeon and pose down. Goal with this set is to just get my quads as pumped as I can possibly get them. So double leg, and sometimes I like to finish with like this kind of set of, you know, like light squeezing, really burning, holding reps. But today, I'm in a little bit more of a mood for some quicker, dirtier reps. And I don't mean dirty isn't bad. That's just kind of how I like to describe it. But only 200 out of the 300 available. So these are going to be quicker, just burning, rapid contraction to stretch back and forth, back and forth. And then once I'm pretty much cooked on just the leg extensions, flip around, body weight sissy squats, holding the back of the seat for balance and a little bit of assistance towards the end, and then we can pose down. I'm already like, there's a certain feeling where even without flexing, your quads are just like tense. And that's what I'm aiming for. So doing a little classic, put the seat all the way back, kind of reclined approach here. Let's make this shit happen. Fan of these kind of hack squats. The ones where it's just plate loaded on a sled, I still do them, I like them, but sometimes they're a little much. Like, you know, it's like doing a tricep push down on a regular crossover cable, you know, where it's like at the pulleys, versus trying to do a push down on like a lat pull down, you know, where it's directly connected. We all know the feeling, like those heavy pull downs at Planet Fitness, nobody uses them. And it's not because they're too heavy, they just don't feel as good. Like I want more of a smooth, forced transition, if you feel me. And that's what it's like here. So if I were to put a scale on my feet, I'd still feel, you know, X 100 pounds, but it doesn't get hit with that momentum as much. So it's just more smooth force the whole way around. You know what I'm saying? Let's start buys differently than last arm day. Very differently. Because last arm day started with 80-pound dumbbell curls. So today, well, 80-pound cable curls, but really that 80 pounds isn't 80. I'm only feeling like 40. Because if that's 80 pounds of steel and it's got one extra pulley in the mix, that means the weight gets divided by half in terms of what it feels through the cable. So basically 40-pound curls, and I'm gonna go back and forth, single arm, 5 reps on each side, and then, you know, kind of just go from there, right? So in the beginning, I want to do a little bit of a hold, a very slow, eccentric, same thing, very controlled, I mean, basically textbook style reps. But as the set progresses, I don't mind getting a little nastier. If I know I've got like maybe one really good clean one, but I could do another 5, you know, kind of slightly swing and body language ones, I think it's worth it, right? And that's my training style, and then I like how pumped I get from it, you know, so it's not just for no reason. It's kind of more of a personal experience thing. But if you're a perfectly clean rep or bust kind of guy, and that works for you, don't let me stop you, keep going. As long as you're pumped, nobody can deny what you're doing. That's how I feel. So for this one, just a quick finisher. Well, actually, let me think. For a second, I thought I was just gonna do decline like presses here to really squeeze, but I think a 2-parter is in order. So I'm talking bent over presses, just kind of quick squeezing, really rapid kind of contractions and stretches, and then drop the weight probably by half and do some squeezing kind of declining flies. A lot of what I've done all day was incline. So this is kind of my finisher, making sure I get blood kind of just everywhere. And it's a different feeling to feel your chest stretch sort of like in this upward motion of like an incline press versus having it pulled like in the opposite of this kind of more declinish fly, you know. I think we all need more incline on average, but I still want to get a good kind of upward stretch. And that's what kind of a downward fly really fits in for me, instead of like, you know, decline bench or something like that. Let's start with some single arm pull downs on this pull down machine, which is extra, well, let's just say extra interesting. So what I mean by that is it's got a couple angles that are playing in its favor, or at least, you know, to make it a different movement than a standard pull down. For one, this handle is much closer to this point of rotation than the weight is, right? So that means I've got a lever that's, you know, kind of, what's the word? Well, I guess it's leverage is rough. I feel heavier weight than the weight is over here. So even though I have one plate loaded, the amount of force that I'm feeling actually lift it is probably more like 1.5. Good for me. So now I only have to load 2 plates, and that's more than enough. And then since it's weight loaded or plate loaded, it's got a different kind of strength curve where it's actually heaviest right when this arm is parallel with the ground, right, or when it's level. And then it actually gets lighter at the bottom and kind of at the top in the stretch. So that means it gets kind of, well, let's just say more comfortable to really loosen up and let myself go all the way as stretched as I can get, because it gets a little bit lighter, and I can squeeze extra hard because it actually gets a little easier at the bottom as well. So a lot of angles at play, and it all boils down to it feels good. So left side first. 2 more right here will be good. And this is kind of a funky leg extension. Sometimes a Planet Fitness has one like this, and it's a bit of a simpler design because all it does is have one cable running from a pulley up to here. And normally leg extensions have a cable that runs on this track so that it's the same weight the whole way around. But with this one, it gets a little lighter at the top, right? It's like a tricep push down almost. The amount of tension you feel in your triceps at the top, way up here, is less than you do right here, because now the force from your hand is like as far away from your elbow as possible. You know, I'm talking, you know, torques, whatever. And it gets lighter as you do it, right? My quads have to work the hardest in the squat at the bottom, and then it gets progressively lighter towards the top. I'm not gonna fail halfway up, at least not usually. So this is just a fancier leg extension because it's light at the top and I can really squeeze like a freaking beast. If you've been watching these lifts long enough, then I'm sure you've noticed a very different style of execution, right? I'm talking, you know, better range of motion, I feel. Overall, just better execution. Triceps, insane. Quads, much more pressing involvement / kind of variety. Yeah, not a ton to change with back, you know, maybe go a little lighter, some squeezing stuff. But it's definitely evolved. But one thing that I do not, you know, want to try to translate is the idea that there is this superiority to a slowly executed set, right? Like, I think there's nothing wrong with it. I'm saying it's good. I've literally been doing more of them as of late than ever before, because you're not going to hurt yourself. You can really bring it, and you're really putting yourself into whatever muscle you're hitting. It's good. There's literally no problem. But what I'm trying to say is it's hard to separate. Well, separate's not the right word. Let me just kind of rewind a second. There's no invalidating the benefit that I at least feel personally from heavier, quicker, just kind of nasty sets, And as much as I'm going to see, oh, you're not going to hold the squeeze. You're not going to... Look, man, if we could Neuralink and you could feel how my quads are feeling after these sets, I think you'd have a different sensation, But I'm not saying that's a universal rule, because that's just what I like, right? Is there anyone in the entire world who is exactly like me? No. So the idea that there is like these cut and dry rules that apply to everyone working out wise, it's the most foolish thing I've ever seen. You're trying to live in a world without Coca-Cola, versus any other kind of whatever. I wanted to tie in that Breaking Bad reference, but it came off a little funky. Let's pretend that didn't happen. But all I'm saying is there's no critique I'm going to hear that's going to invalidate how these feel for me, And of course, that's in moderation. But let's get one more going. I've been on a bit of a kick of sometimes, and not all muscle groups, but with some, starting light and squeezing and then working my way up to more of a heavier set later, kind of phasing the workouts like brunt, if you could call it, in like sort of a slower slope. Whereas today, let's start off a little heftier. Of course, I've warmed up, 20s, 40s, 60s, 75s, so now I'm certainly ready to curl the 80s first. But sometimes I like starting with a heavier set, just hard, nasty, failure at, 10, 12, whatever. Because it just kind of, I don't have a scientific explanation here, right? But I can definitely say for sure that once the set is over, I don't know, just something about the kind of heft and damage that's been done with the heavy one. I feel like it lets me bring it harder on the lighter squeezing sets later, because they almost feel more necessary, because the heavier, more kind of like destructive, quote unquote, set has already been completed. And then all I can really do is just, focus on squeezing and burning on everything else, But I think let's just get a song playing and go nuts here. 15 reps would be cool. That would be a good number.